Hello and welcome to Open Line. I'm Starlene Stringer. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and our guests today are ready to talk about the problem and the resources available locally. Heather Koval is the Victim Services Supervisor at the Family Advocacy Center. Diana Franzetti is the Executive Director of Brighter Tomorrows, and I want to thank them both for being here. Welcome, ladies. Well, let's just get right to it. Heather, how big of a problem is domestic violence?
Well, it's a problem all over the United States. We certainly see about the same statistics of domestic violence in Irving that we do across other similar cities and states. In the city of Irving, we average about 200 domestic violence cases a month that get reported to the city. Wow. We know that domestic violence is significantly underreported. Only about 40% of cases are actually reported to the police. So that leaves another 60% that are going unreported and undocumented.
Wow. And I have to ask, and this is for you, Diana, just what trends are you seeing, or are there fewer cases?
No, there's more. There are more. I think it's bittersweet that we're all talking about it more, but we really need to keep the conversation going. I think I just gave a presentation several weeks ago, and a woman came up to me and said in the 70s she was abused, and she didn't have any place to call, any place to go, and now, I mean, at least we do have all of those, and all the domestic violence shelters and all the providers in Dallas County, we all work together to house somebody wherever we can.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. And Heather, when should someone report an incident they consider domestic violence?
Well, we certainly encourage people that if they're in a situation that they fear for their safety, that they can call 911 and know that the police are a support system and a resource for them to keep them safe. Our main goal is their safety. That's really what we want to do, is to keep people safe. So anytime they're in fear for their safety, that they're being threatened or physically harmed, they're free to call the police and make a police report.
And my understanding is that the domestic violence shelter is part of the police department. Is that correct? The Advocacy Center portion is part of the police department. How does that work?
So we work in concert with the shelters. The Family Advocacy Center actually provides crisis counseling and crisis intervention to assess a client and determine what options and resources may be best for their specific situation. So some of our victims aren't willing to consider shelter, and we have to look at what other options and resources may be available for that victim to keep them safe and to help them in their long-term goals. So, but victims who are interested in shelter, we work very closely with Brighter Tomorrows and the other local shelters to determine what's going to be best for their self-sufficiency.
Sounds good. And what about confidentiality issues?
When a victim makes a police report, our Victim Services unit gets a copy of that offense report, and we work directly with those victims. And so certain things we can't keep confidential just due to the fact that we are part of the police department. But if a victim comes and they're not ready to make a police report yet, they just want to know, what are my options, what are my resources? Those are things that we can keep confidential. Of course, there are certain limitations with child abuse and things like that. But if it's strictly a domestic violence situation, we can talk to that victim about what their options and resources are and not disclose that to the police department, because for some victims, making a police report is not a step that they want to take. But there's other resources like protective orders, shelter, and programs like that that they could be eligible for, and we actually help them in their process.
Thank you for explaining that. And I also know, Diana, that one of the things Brighter Tomorrows helps with is transitional housing.
Yes.
It's very important. Can you tell me about that?
Oh, I'd be happy to. Everybody that is in our transitional housing program has come from a shelter, so they were fleeing domestic violence. It's a very stringent program, and they apply and can be in our program up to 2 years. And because of the grants and all the support we get from the community, they are able to stay there for up to 2 years. We pay rent and electricity, and we encourage them to put at least 30% of their salary into savings. So when they leave the program, they've learned how to budget, they've learned many life skills, and I've had people leave with $28,000 to go and start their new life and get into safe housing for themselves and their children. So it is a wonderful program. We have 19 apartments here in Irving, and those people learn to live individually. A lot of them have never lived on their own. They've either been with their abuser, maybe went from their home, childhood home, straight into that situation and have never lived on their own. They maybe haven't worked, so the program really, we work with them in all areas of their life to get them on the track and to become really productive citizens
Which
and
is good.
safe.
Definitely, keep them safe. That's
Yes,
very important.
yes.
And I'm glad that you pointed that out and gave us a little information about that, because oftentimes you hear people that are victims of domestic violence, they say they stay because they, like you said, are not familiar with how to take
Right.
care of themselves, how to budget their own money, how to get their own house. So y'all help with that.
We do. You know, a lot of people say when I give presentations, why don't they just leave? Well, imagine you walked out of your house this morning with what's in your purse or your wallet. You don't have a checkbook, you don't have any money, and you've got a couple of little kids that are maybe 2 and 4. Where are you going to go? What are you going to? I mean, it's just not that easy to walk out. And my overriding question is, why should they have to? Why should they have to leave their home because of that situation? It shouldn't be there at all. That violent situation should not be happening. We just have to say no, that we're not going to tolerate it anymore. We have to.
That's right. And some of the housing that you mentioned, I want to go back to that because I understand it's going under renovation.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. The city of Irving, yes. The wonderful city of Irving and the mayor have granted us money, and our transitional housing program will be undergoing renovation. Those apartments are about 40 years old, so we're starting that hopefully the 1st of November and have new apartments for all of our clients. So,
Very good
yes,
news.
It's wonderful.
Definitely. Well, Heather, I know the Advocacy Center provides all kinds of services. So can you tell me about them? What do you do?
The Irving Family Advocacy Center was designed to be a coordinated community response. From all the research, we found that the best intervention for domestic violence is for community to be coordinated, working together. So we have investigators who handle the investigations on domestic violence cases. We have our victim services unit that provides the crisis counseling, the information referrals, the support system that the victim may need, whether they want to go to shelter or do something else. We will help them through that process and through the court process. We have a counseling agency that provides ongoing therapy for victims, both who've been victims of domestic violence and victims who have gone to the shelter, who do ongoing counseling. And then we have a child abuse unit with CPS, Child Protective Services, that will handle any child abuse that's going on in the home. We know that sometimes those things coexist. And so to protect the children, the CPS unit works hand in hand with our investigators and our victim services unit.
Wonderful. And I'm glad you mentioned the children because I know something else is happening for the children too. Yeah, they're building a playground?
We are in the process of it, yes. So we were able through a grant to get a child trauma counselor to work with child abuse victims. Most of our child abuse cases are domestic violence in nature. And so we have kids who get brought to our building and may be there for a couple of hours waiting to have their forensic interview done or those types of things. And so we wanted an area that children could go and play safely. And so we're calling it a therapy garden because we're also going to use it for outdoor therapy, play groups, and those types of things. So we're currently in the process of getting fundraising and donations in order to build that outdoor fenced area so that we can allow kids to go outside and play. Sometimes that can be so therapeutic and helpful in their process.
Very nice. And how can viewers watching right now go about making a donation if they'd like to help?
If they want to call the Irving Family Advocacy Center and request to speak to the Victim Services Unit, we can let them know what that process can be.
Sounds good. And the number's on the screen so they can call in right now. And Diana, what kind of services do y'all offer for children?
Well, we have a children's counselor, and she does play therapy, and that is with citizens in the city, in Irving and Grand Prairie, at no charge. And she also works with the transitional housing children and the children that are in the shelter. So all of our counselors are all licensed, and they're very busy all the time. In fact, last year, the children's program counselor had over 683 individual sessions with children. So that's a lot. We know, as Heather has already said, that when children see it or experience it, they're at much greater risk of becoming an abused person or an abuser as they even go into their teen years, teen pregnancy, alcohol and drug abuse. It's just and we were just talking before the show how children just absorb everything that they see, and if they see domestic violence and sexual assault all the time, they just believe that's the norm, which of course it is not. So,
Definitely not.
So
Very
we
sad.
work with the children all the time, many, many children.
Wonderful. And switching gears a little bit, Heather, I know there's a new program called BIP. What does that stand for?
So BIP is a Batters Intervention and Prevention Program, and I believe that the shelter is currently providing.
Well, we're getting ready to get certified with the Criminal Justice Division of Texas.
Okay.
So we'll be providing those classes.
And BIP programs are a lot of times what offenders get referred to when they have maybe a conviction or a deferred adjudication on their domestic violence charge. And it's a program that's really specific to why offenders are abusive in intimate relationships. So sometimes victims feel like it's an anger management problem or an anger management issue. And when we start to really look at what's going on, they can control their anger at work or when they're driving or those situations, but they really truly become violent at home in an intimate partner relationship. And that's what BIP is designed to do, is to look at that intimate partner relationship and why the violence is occurring in that relationship.
I see. And tell me more about your involvement with BIP.
Well, you have to become certified with the Texas Criminal Justice Division, and so we are going through the process now of sending in our application and making sure we have everything and then in line, and then we'll be able to provide. It's a 24-week program.
Okay.
So those offenders that have been directed by the judge have to go to different sessions for 24 weeks, and we will be providing those classes for them.
Very good. All right, let's talk about the signs more, Heather, of domestic violence, because I mean, relationships are very complicated, especially when children are involved. What are the warning signs to look for that would show you that this is not a healthy environment?
Well, some of the main things we want to look at actually may not be physically abusive. So things like the controlling factors, wanting to constantly know where the victim is going, what they're doing, who they're going to be with, checking in by phone. We've even had victims who have to take a picture of where they're at and send that to the abuser to let them know what they're doing and where they are. So those are some of the things that we really look at the beginning stages as things that are starting the controlling behaviors, controlling how much money they have, how much access to funds they have, what they do with the children and how they treat the children, those types of things. So those are all issues that related to power and control. Sure. And then, you know, some people think that a victim is a victim if they have a bruise or a black eye. That's kind of the picture we have of a victim of domestic violence. But a lot of times this may start off as a push, a shove, throwing and breaking an object out of anger at the victim, things to intimidate that individual. And then they may escalate over time to kicking, punching, slapping, choking, those types of things. So this is something that can escalate over time. We typically do see it becomes more violent and more frequent over time. So, you know, sometimes it's easy to excuse it and say, well, it was just a push, it was just a slap. But the problem is that this may escalate. And so we'd rather victims contact us and get the help and the support that they need at the very beginning stages so that hopefully we can prevent it from escalating.
Yeah, because on the media side, we see what happens when they don't get help sometimes, and it's not good. Diana, it's not just women or men or children affected. Sometimes pets are involved as well,
Yes.
right?
Yes, they are. We've been learning that about 43% of the women who are in those situations will not leave because the abuser has threatened to kill or torture or hurt the pet. And anybody who has a pet, that's part of the family. So that is a really huge coercion, leverage, manipulation of the person that they're abusing. And so Brighter Tomorrows, clearly somebody can't really bring pets into the shelter, but we're working on that so that they can for a few days, and then we can foster those pets out. And so we have the Purple Paw Project coming up. It's October the 18th at Lively Park here in Irving. And it's to raise awareness on that, raise some funding so that we can take care of any pets that may come in. But to know that somebody's staying in a very violent situation because someone is threatening to kill your pet is just another layer of this terrible epidemic and just another example of coercion and how somebody can manipulate someone.
Yeah, we got to see some video while you were talking about the Purple Paw Project, and it was really nice to see what you're doing, and glad you're doing it again this year.
Thank you.
Well, we know that it's not always about the pets or the children. So Heather, sometimes people say they stay because of money, right?
Absolutely. So the financial piece is a huge burden for a lot of victims, and just not having access to money or those kinds of things. But also as a result of victimization, they may incur some significant financial expenses from medical bills and those types of things. We actually work with a program out of the Attorney General's office called Crime Victim Compensation, and one of the things that they do is they provide financial assistance to victims of violent crime for certain expenses. Things like medical bills, lost wages for having to meet with an investigator or a prosecutor, child or dependent care, and even for victims of domestic violence, they can provide relocation assistance to help them get out and get relocated. For some victims, it's just that initial cost that they can't overcome. They can sustain a residence, but they can't get that application fee, that deposit, the connection fee set up, and those first couple months. So it's a short-term program, it's not long-term, but it does provide those necessary funds to get them out and relocated and in a safe place.
Nice. So what are some of the other reasons you hear from victims? Why do they stay? Besides money, besides pets, children, what other reasons do you hear?
Fear. A lot of it is fear. If you look at the news media and you see when there's homicides that happen, most of the time it's victims who have left, who have filed for protective orders, who have filed for divorce. And victims hear that. If you leave me, I will kill you. And that threat is very real. And so we certainly want victims who are ready to leave to take that step safely, to work with a shelter or a victim services program to plan that so that they can do that safely. Because there are safe ways to leave an abusive relationship. But I think fear is one of the most debilitating things that we see. Also, they'll see that he's only abusive to me, not to the kids, and he's a good dad for the kids. And they want their kids to have a dad in the home and have a relationship with them. So they kind of say, well, I can take it, and as long as he doesn't hurt the children, then it's okay.
Wow.
The reality is that these children have videotapes with their eyes seeing what's happening in the home, and it does impact them. So, but those are some of the very basic reasons, and it makes so much sense because it is hard.
It does make sense. What other things do you hear, Diana?
Well, I just wanted to say, so anybody that's in that situation can call our hotline 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and all the other domestic violence shelters in Dallas County, and just talk to a case manager who's been highly trained to talk to them and start safety planning immediately on the phone, not even telling that person get out, but think about it. Think when you can be safe. Get all your paperwork together. Put some money with somebody that you know, that you trust. Get your ducks in a row and not just leave because that is when they're in most highly danger of becoming.
So we have the number on the
hurt.
screen.
Yes,
Yeah, we don't want
yes.
anyone to get hurt, so
Right,
they can call
right.
that number listed on the screen. Do you hear other things from the victims that you can think of that they may say the reasons for why they stay?
Well, really, honestly, fear. It's
Fear's the
fear
big one.
and not having any funds. If somebody's been with an abuser who won't let them have any money, doesn't let them work, they are continuously pregnant and can't work, maybe have not finished school, or not being allowed to finish their high school or go into any kind of upper education. It's just all those combinations together. I mean, I just really think, how can you leave a place if you have no resources? If you can't even have a credit card to go pay for a hotel room somewhere, or you have any cash, and you've got 2 or 3 or 4 kids with you that are under the age of 4 or 5, which happens. We have women come in with twins and 2 or 3 other kids, and they're in a shelter. So it's just not that easy to walk out. I always challenge everybody in my presentations to just know that you're not going back tonight to your house. You don't have your medicine, you don't have your glasses, you don't have anything. So it's just not that easy, but fear, I think. But we have so many great successes of women that come into our shelter and our transitional that they get strong and they can stand up and do it, that I would just encourage anybody listening to call any domestic violence hotline and start getting help and just talk to somebody, because they know how to answer those questions for them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Heather, I'm just curious to know, what do you find those who do contact you guys, who do seek help, what do they need the most help with?
Just knowing what options are available to them. So many people don't know what the resources are and what their options are, even what the process is.
Sure.
So just understanding what's available to them, and that's what we hear a lot from victims, is I had no idea that these resources were available to me. And most of the general public doesn't know about those resources. So I think the big thing is just making sure that they know what all their options are, and just basic safety planning. There are some very simple things that people can do to be and to stay safe. So talking about those things and addressing them before something else happens, the more prepared you are for a situation, the better equipped you are to handle a stressful and emotionally heightened situation. So we want to make sure they're prepared.
Makes sense. And Diana told us how people can reach them. How can people reach the Advocacy Center?
So I think our phone number may be on the screen, but they can just call the main number to the Irving Family Advocacy Center at 972-721-6560 and request to speak to staff and victim services. And they are all incredibly well trained and capable of assisting any victim of any type of violent crime.
Wonderful. But I do want to point out that sometimes it's really important just to dial 911, right?
Absolutely. If you are in an emergency situation, always call 911. Mm-hmm.
And let me ask you this, Heather. I know someone watching right now may be thinking, I'm not going through this, but I have a friend or a family member, someone I know who is. If you believe one of your friends is in an abusive relationship, what are your obligations legally and ethically to do something?
Well, that can kind of be sticky.
Okay.
If you see something happening, if you hear something happening to your next door neighbor, it's okay to call 911. Okay. It's better to get the police out there and prevent something from happening than to wait and something's already happened. So I know a lot of times neighbors don't want to get involved, they don't want to say anything, but the reality is if it's disturbing you and you're concerned, call 911. And there's protections for witnesses who are reporting domestic violence. As a friend, if anyone who wants to call us and find out what to say and what not to say to a victim, how to help a victim safety plan, those are things that we love to help family members and friends with, because sometimes we can say things that are really detrimental to victims getting help, trying to be helpful, but our words can be very poignant to a victim, and so we have to know what we're saying and how we're saying it. So we certainly encourage family members and friends, call us, we'll talk to you about how you can say things, what you can say, because when you confront a victim of domestic violence, they may be resistant or defensive of the relationship, that things are going to get better and that they're working on it. So how can you address that in love and caring and showing that you want to help them? So those are some things that we can assist family members and friends in doing.
Very good. And I want to switch topics a little bit. I want to find out how your organization is funded, because some people may be curious to know that. Can you let us know?
Yes. We have about a $1.5 million budget, and we have the two shelters, the transitional housing, 2 thrift stores, and a resource counseling center. So there's a lot of people working to help a lot of other people that need it. But we get government grants, federal, state, and city. We have a fundraising luncheon every year, Chocolate and Chic, and that's in March. We have the Purple Paw Project. And then we get grants from foundations, corporations, individuals give us money. So all of that money has to be raised every year. It's not for sure, so that's a lot to do, but we take care of a lot of people all year long.
That's wonderful. And if someone's watching right now, how can they help out other than participating in these events or supporting you that way? They can just make financial contributions?
Financial and, supply drives. You can imagine, so let's say both shelters are full every night. That's 72 people per night. So imagine everything in your home that you need, from toilet paper to cleaning supplies to everything that you could possibly need. We need that times 72 people per night, and without fail every night. So we need a lot of help, and we get a lot of help from the communities. Can't thank everybody enough, but just always think of us. And if you don't give to us, give to whatever charity of your choice. Nonprofits are here for the good of the community, so we all have to take care of everybody. Yeah.
I love it. And we had the number up on the screen while you were telling us that, so hopefully people will write that down, give you guys a call and help out. I have to ask, Heather, what's the most rewarding part of your job?
I think just seeing the change that can happen just by some people having information they didn't have before. We work with an amazing population of individuals. They're strong, they're courageous, they're very brave. And so seeing them make transitions in their lives to promote safety in their families and to change the dynamic of what's happened for so many years, it's just powerful to see. And so I think I just get to see people who are they overcome amazing feats, and that's the exciting part.
It looks like Diana's going to agree with you and say the same thing.
I have so many stories, but to have, my family always says, why are you in nonprofit? Why are you doing that? And I'm like, because I want to see the results, and we do. To see a client come back with one of our staff case managers and say, that she says, I stood up to him in court and he's going to get his due and I am stronger for it, is just amazing. And many, many times we have clients in the shelter come down the next morning and talk to their case manager and say, that's the first time in a very long time that I've had a really good night's sleep, not having to worry about what's going to happen to me during the night. So that is truly rewarding, and just to see the strength of the clients and the children when they can move on to safe living.
I love it.
Fabulous, fabulous.
It's definitely, I can imagine. And so Heather, I have to ask, I mean, a lot of people are becoming more aware, if they weren't aware of domestic violence this month in particular. What do you hope they come away with?
I think the main thing is that victims don't stay in abusive relationships because they want to be abused, and they stay for a lot of very valid reasons, and they're trying to do the best that they can for their family. So they need the information, the support, the encouragement, instead of the negativity and the judgment that oftentimes comes with that. So there is a stigma that victims encounter about reporting and talking about what's happening behind closed doors. And that's the thing, a lot of domestic violence is not videotaped, it's not documented. It's really what the victim is telling an officer or a family member or a friend. It's hard because they're being judged and looked at and evaluated on what they're saying. So just that there are options. I want victims to know there's options, there's resources, there are people who care and want to help them in their process towards safety.
Thank you. And Diana, what do you hope people take away from the increased awareness during Domestic Violence Awareness Month?
Well, I hope that everyone will just keep talking. Like I said, in the 70s we didn't. Now we're talking about it. But I went to the Dallas Mayor's Men Against Abuse breakfast Saturday morning, and I think it was Michael Irving who said, years ago, before MAD came into existence, people used to say, oh, well, I had a little too much to drink last night, but I drove anyway. And now that is just a huge stigma. We don't do it. And I think we have to make domestic violence that. I thought that was a great analogy, that it's taken a while, but we can get to the point where it is not acceptable for anybody to do that. And I think we all have to keep that conversation going. And I challenge anybody who's listening to keep the conversation going, not just in October, but
year-round.
Year-round, all the time.
Speaking of year-round, you mentioned something a few minutes ago about something that comes up in March. It has to do with chocolate?
Chocolate.
Let's go back and revisit that. It sounds really good. Tell me more about that.
It is our Chocolate and Chic Luncheon. It's been going on for many, almost 20 years. We're happy to say this year we're going to be on March the 25th in the Verizon Theater at Grand Prairie. Yes. We have Rebecca Lopez from WFAA who will be our Mistress of Ceremonies. And we have just secured Constable Beth Villarreal, who has an amazing domestic violence story from her childhood, as our keynote speaker. So we're very, very excited. We raise money, but we really want to spread the word and tell more and more people about what we do and what the resources are out there. So
well, I'm glad to hear they're going to be there, and thanks for telling us the date. But for people like me, we're like, tell us more about the chocolate. So what does it have to do with chocolate? I'm like, what?
Well, there's lots of chocolate everywhere at your table. Yes, we have it in the live auction. We have chocolate everywhere. So yes, chocolate and chic. So it's a good event. It's a luncheon, and so you get in, you give us a little money, you get to hear some great speakers, and
you get chocolate for a great cause.
That's right, you get chocolate.
Well, we are out of time, but I want to thank you both for being here and talking about this very, very important situation, which is domestic violence, and hopefully someone watching is going to get help or get help for someone who needs it. So thank you both.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I'm Starlene Stringer. Please be sure to join us on Thursday, November 6th, for our next edition of Open Line. Our guest will be from the city's health board. If you have questions, email ictn@cityofirving.org, and we'll get answers for you on the next edition of Open Line. See you then.